say a guy is listening to this, and we have, by the way, about 25% of our audience are females. But let's say a guy's listening to this and they're thinking, and actually, let me predict what might happen, because this has happened in the past, right? They read a book and they get all excited about it, and then they want to like go fix their family, right? So they want to go, right? And I'm just thinking about like some of the principles we're talking about today. And so when you figure something out, you've spent 5 years, I couldn't help but imagine this scenario of like, how do you talk to your wife about this? Because you figure all this out, but she's not doing the deep research and writing the book. And, you know, how do you keep on the same page with your wife about these principles and ideas?
Yeah, it's always tough to talk in generalizations, but let me say what the stats say. The stats say that even in dual income heterosexual households, women take on a disproportionate share of household responsibilities. Okay, so this definitely occurred in my household. We would have, a few years ago, my wife and I would constantly fight about household responsibilities, right? She was saying, why wasn't I taking out the trash? Why wasn't I doing the laundry? Why wasn't I pulling my share with my daughter? And this really upset me, because I would turn to her and I would say, look, honey, if you want me to do something, I'm not a mind reader. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And that was my line for years. And I know men out there are saying, wait a minute, I use that line. Here's the problem. The reason women take on a disproportionate share of housework, even when they're dual income, is because we men don't realize that asking women to be our boss is work. And they're taking on that work, right? Telling us what to do is a pain in the ass. And so it wasn't until I stepped up and said, wait a minute, what are my values? My values include being in an equitable marriage. It's not fair. If my wife works just as much as I do, why should I not do as much of the household admin as she does? That's just not fair. And it took me a while to realize that. I kept making up all kinds of excuses. But once I realized that, I wanted to change something about it. And so what I did was we sat down together for maybe 30 minutes, and we just listed all the household responsibilities: who pays the bills, who drives our daughter to class, who picks up the groceries, all the stuff that we have to do. And then, so now we had a list of output, all the stuff that needs to get done. And most productivity gurus will say, okay, that's it. Just put it on a to-do list. Ta-da! That's all you got to do. Doesn't work that way. Here's the thing. We talked about the first step to becoming indistractable is about mastering the internal triggers. The second step is to make time for traction. So we talked about traction is anything that pulls you towards what you want to do with intent. The problem is that 2/3 of Americans don't keep any sort of calendar. So how can you call something a distraction if you don't know what it distracted you from? Right? If you don't plan your day, somebody is going to plan it for you. And so just having that to-do list allowed me to procrastinate, because I'd say, oh yeah, I'll get it done. It's on the to-do list. I'll get it done. Sure. And then it wouldn't get done, or it'd get done last minute. And then the stuff that would just pop up would throw the whole plan off, would throw the stuff off task, because I leave it to the last minute. So if there's something I forgot to do or something that came up, now I have no wiggle room. Today, that doesn't happen. My wife and I never fight about this anymore. We have solved this problem, and everyone can solve this problem. Here's what you do. You make time for traction. You have whatever your values are, and I'm not going to tell you what your values should be. If you don't put it on your calendar, you're kidding to yourself, right? If taking care of your body is one of your values, I'm not saying it should be, but if it is for me, that time has to be on your calendar to go to the gym, to go on a walk, whatever it might be. If friendships are, being someone's friend and knowing someone intimately, being with your buddies is important to you, that's got to be on your calendar, whether it's a bowling league, whether it's a church group, whether it's, time with, having beer at the bar with your friends, whatever it might be, it's got to be on your calendar. Certainly when it comes to our relationships, putting time on your calendar, certainly for that date day with your wife, certainly for that, these household responsibilities. And that's what we did. So not only do I have the to-dos of, okay, I know every Saturday, my responsibilities, I cook we do these meal prep things, right? Where we cook a bunch of food in the beginning of the week so that we don't have to spend a lot of time throughout the week. That's my responsibility. Not only that, I know when I do it in my day. It's in my calendar. And then once a week, my wife and I sit down together and we do this schedule sync. We sit down and we look at each other's calendars, and they're all time boxed, meaning we know how we're spending all of our time for that week. And so that plan, the fact that we have a time box calendar, allows us to look at each other's schedule and then do what's called a schedule sync. I also do this, with work colleagues. It's incredibly effective at work as well. So to get back to your question, how do you How do you help others see this technique? How do you share this with others? I think actually most men will have a very easy time sharing this with most women, given the statistics, given the fact that women pull more of their weight than they deserve to pull. This is a way for us to do our share. This is our way to be better. I mean, if you want to improve your marriage, if you've ever had an argument like this where your spouse has said, hey, you're not pulling your weight, this is how we show up. And when you do that, when you say, hey, look, I'm using this new technique, it's called becoming indistractable. Part of it is having a time box schedule and then doing this schedule sync with me. What do you think? Can we do this once a week so that we know what's coming in the week ahead so that I can make sure I'm pulling my load? That's, I think, how we enter that conversation with our significant other. In the workplace, what we do, it's a little bit more complicated, but I think, what I discovered, there's a whole section in the book about how to build an indistractable workplace. I think we also start from the center. We start with us, right? We don't want to preach to everyone about it before we've started to use some of these tactics ourselves. So the first step is to become indistractable yourselves, to use some of the techniques I described in the book. People will see how much more productive and happier you are in your life. It's an amazing feeling to do what you say you're going to do every day. And then I think it goes in rings, right? So I talk about in the book, the Boston Consulting Group that had this horrible workplace culture, very high employee attrition rate. And then they started changing the company with just one case team of just 8 people. And that one case team did a few things that I describe in the book that now is used throughout the entire organization of thousands and thousands of people.
Mm. You sparked this thought of what does an indistractable home environment look like? You talked about an indistractable workplace. What does it look like at home?
At home, it's indistractable home life is one where people do what they say they're going to do. Mm. Now, that doesn't mean not have any fun, right? When I say time box your calendar, I want you to time box time for social media, if that's what you find fun. If you like watching sports on TV, I want you to put that in your calendar. But it's an indistractable household is one where people, not only do they do what they say they're going to do, they allow others to do what they say they're going to do, okay? So that means that if we say we're going to have dinner together, let's have dinner fully present, where mommy and daddy, not only the kids, are not using their devices. If dad wants to go watch television, that's fine. Leave him alone. If the kids want to play video games for an hour, leave them alone. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as it's planned with intent. That's the key attribute. This technology is not melting your brain. It's not addicting anybody. It's not hijacking people. That's rubbish. Well, asterisk. Some people actually do have the pathology where they have OCD. They have disorders that can lead them to addiction. Very small percent of the population. The vast majority of us are not addicted. Sometimes we just get distracted.
I would think that there's a certain percentage of the population listening right now that might want to challenge this idea of like, well, if I'm so rigid, if I time block and I have all this integrity around my calendar, then won't I lose the freedom of capturing something in the moment? Like if I don't look at my phone, what if I miss something important? If I'm not open and available to all these things, then that serendipitous, opening in the life where the person shows up at the right time right. It's like, there's a rigidness to that I'm guessing some people are going to question, hey, I would have missed this brilliant opportunity in my life if I wasn't willing to be distracted by this other thing that, wasn't as good in the long run, but I wouldn't have known that unless I got distracted by this other thing over here.
Yeah. So there's a difference between distraction and diversion. So distraction by definition is doing something you did not intend to do. It's when you plan to do something and got taken off track. And the fact of the matter is, if you don't plan these things in your life, they're not going to happen. If one of your values, by the way, is to go on long walks, is to plan spontaneity. For example, in my calendar, there are 3 hours every weekend that I have for my daughter. Now, what we do is spontaneous, right? Doesn't matter what we do. What I want to do is be with my daughter.
Yeah.
And that's fine. You can plan spontaneity with your friends, with your wife, with your colleagues, whatever it is you want to do. You can plan for whatever it is you want to do. The problem is in this day and age, if you have white space in your calendar, people think, oh, you know what? I need white space in my calendar so that I'll work on that novel. So I'll start that side hustle. So I'll finally have time with my wife and my kids. No, it doesn't work that way. You know what you're going to do at that time? You're going to check goddamn email.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to do. If you're going to check social media, you're going to flip on ESPN. That's what you're going to do. Unless you make time for the things that are values in your life. If you don't have a problem with distraction, you're listening to the wrong podcast episode, right? Don't read my book. But if you find that you don't get those things done, but you want to do those things, let me tell you, leaving yourself open to that spontaneous occurrence isn't working. Is it working? No, it didn't work for me. It only works when we plan time for the things that are consistent with our values. Because the fact of the matter is, it is just too easy to get distracted by stuff these days. Yeah. And if you don't plan your day, by definition, you can't call anything a distraction. If you've got lots of white space in your day, everything is a distraction. Yeah. Right? And here's what's going to happen. We are built biologically to be perpetually perturbed. Our species is designed to always want, to always need more. That's why we come hardwired with this tendency towards boredom. There's a study I cite in the book by Timothy Wilson where they put people in a room and they told them to sit in that room for 15 minutes and just sit in that room. The only thing in that room was a band that they put on their arm that would administer a painful electrocution that they told them would be painful.
So good. I love this part. So
67% of men and 25% of women shocked themselves in order to just feel something, right? So that's why we are constantly looking for a distraction. It's in our DNA. And if you think about it, from an evolutionary basis, this is very good, right? If you're sitting on your butt on the savannah 200,000 years ago, you are hardwired to go do something, go hunt, go find some more food, go invent something, do something. That's what makes our species so great. And so we have to learn how to channel that into traction rather than distraction. And if you just leave time in your day for whatever, you're not going to live up to your values, unfortunately.
Man, that was such a powerful visual of like, I could see it happening, right? Somebody just
I would have totally shocked myself.
I mean, I gotta see what this feels like, right?
Okay. Ow. Okay. Now I got it.
Yeah. And I wonder if I do that again, will it hurt more or less? What's gonna happen here?
Yeah. Totally.
That was one of my favorite parts.